Hello, good morning. I want to thank BizFed, first of all, for hosting this great series. It's really important that we get out there and spread the word about what we can all be doing to prepare for the next earthquake and what other disaster might befall us. So it's really a pleasure to be here to speak with you today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a guide we put together here this last year. We scheduled it for publication right before the Ridgecrest earthquake because we knew that was coming. And so, just want to be prepared for that. So we're sort of trying to ride on the coattails of the earthquake a little bit and get some awareness of great practices that you can take. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. And, when I think about resilience, there's a lot of topics that we sort of deal with at LEEDC, right? We're a nonprofit. We do a lot of pro bono work helping businesses, and they face challenges of all kinds. And, earthquake preparedness is one of those. We helped out businesses affected by the Woolsey fire last year. There's also, cyber attacks to think about. Resilience for a recession that might come, and even simple things like succession planning. If you're the business owner is retiring and there hasn't been much thought given to how the business is going to keep going ahead. So we work with businesses on those kinds of activities. But we're not focused entirely on business. We do a lot with the educational sector and the government sector too. We're kind of very holistic in our approach to economic development. So I want to talk a little bit about the guide and the things we recommend in it. First of all, you can probably imagine that after an earthquake, there's going to be no power at the office, and your workers will either be at home or they're going to want to go home. So, they'll want to check on their homes and so forth. So, the question becomes, how are you going to continue business without workers or power at the office? So, and there may be other services that are down, utilities of all kinds, internet, cell phones, and so, how do we plan for that? Well, the great news is, compared to 1994 when we had the big Northridge quake, so many new tools are available, and there are things like the guide here. There's an initiative being piloted by the state called Outsmart Disaster, and they've got a Resilient Business Challenge, which is fantastic. I recommend businesses check that out. It's free. We also want to mention the City of LA has a new cyber lab, and they offer free training and threat intelligence for businesses. If you're worried about, hey, are we being hacked? Are they getting away with trade secrets? You can go visit Cyber Lab. They'll help you with that. And I think the most important new tool that's out there is the cloud, right? The cloud is an incredibly important IT asset. We encourage people to move away from the idea of doing on-site tape backups and that sort of thing and back it up to the cloud automatically. For example, at our shop, we've got a little appliance you connect up to the server, and it backs up not only our data to the cloud every night, but it also backs up images of the server. So if we ever had to start with new hardware, we just take that image off the cloud and load it on new hardware, and we're running. And you can also configure to run your business in the cloud. So if you have no hardware, no nothing, you can still spool up your applications in the cloud and access those remotely. So that's just an incredible tool to utilize. There's a couple companies we reference in our guide. We don't make any recommendations, but just trying to make you aware of companies like Datto, Infrascale, that are make these little appliances and also have some services around that to get you going. And then I'll also mention, there's kind of the basics, right? Preparedness. You want to have some food, some water. And I'll talk a little bit about the financial piece of that too, because your employees may be stuck at the office for a little while. So one thing we heard loud and clear as we were talking to the experts around town developing this guide is you cannot do everything you usually do at a business after an earthquake. You've got to make a really small list of things that have to happen for operations to continue. So, think about each department and what its dependencies are, and, think of the 3 things you have to do for business to continue in that department. Don't make a long list. It's just going to be too hard. And you have to look at your suppliers, vendors you count on, what's their response to a disaster? Have you talked to them? Will you still be able to get products and services from them? So think about that, and then also great opportunity to update your employee emergency contact list and think about how are you going to reach your employees? There are services out there you can use for that, and we mentioned those in the guide. So those are all really good things to consider. Now, one thing, back to the employees, if they are working from the house, there are ways they can continue to be productive. We think a lot of them will be able to telecommute, assuming that there's any internet connectivity. Cell phone networks may be the way to do that. So we would encourage loading up apps on their phones so that they can actually conduct business. Maybe there's financial apps they need, or other types of apps to interface with your business system. So you can take the step of loading those up. Give them a solar charger so they can charge up their phone at the house if there's no power. And then, cross-train, right? Because if you've got some employees that know a task and they're inaccessible, maybe you've got another employee that, I know how to run payroll, So those are all really helpful. And then lastly, on the topic of IT, think about mobility. It's helpful if you have portable IT infrastructure like notebook computers that you could take home, and then you'd want those key employees to take those home every day in case they're stuck at the house and you need to get on a VPN or something. So those are a couple things. That's really back on the IT page. So let me talk a little bit about this slide. One thing I should mention about this, if you do set up additional access points, just think about, again, hacking and what you're doing to protect yourselves from that. Set up second layer authentication, those kind of steps, just to be thoughtful about that. The utility companies I've talked to also mention that it's likely that power will be cycling on and off as they try and stabilize the grid. So it's a real bad situation to have the power come off and then come right back on and then come right back off, when your computers are trying to reboot. So if you have a backup power supply for your computer and equip it with some shutdown software so it'll actually shut down the files in an orderly fashion, that's pretty valuable in this kind of situation. Okay, that kind of covers my thoughts on IT. The one question mark is, can you actually get to the cloud from your phone if cell phone networks are down? And that's a question we're working on, and we're trying to drive some resilience in the cell phone networks, and hopefully I'll have an update on that sometime. So we also have to think a little bit about our customers. Where is your website hosted, for example? We have our website hosted in the cloud. It's actually hosted out of region so that if there's a local power failure, the website stays running. It's not impacted by what's happening here. We actually have a page that we're going to activate on the website with kind of an emergency set of information. But you can also set it up to provide an update to customers. We've experienced a disruption. There may be a delay in orders, whatever it's going to be. And you can also use social media for that, right? If your phones are if your phones at the office are down because of power, what happens to those calls? Do you have any provisions with your provider to route those calls, forward them to an employee who's out of region, for example? So that's something to think about. And just think about what other expectations your customers might have and how you can realign those expectations just to let them know. You've got to be a little patient. So on the financial side, this is really important. If you have a way to pre-establish lines of credit with your bank, it's helpful to do that now before there's a big rush and people need loans in the aftermath of an earthquake. Think about insurance. Most major policies do not cover earthquake interruption insurance. So take a look at your policy, see if it's covered. Think about adding that coverage if need be. It's typically only offered in the secondary insurance market, so you may need a broker for that. Also, we like the idea of moving away from paper checks and paper receivables because it's going to be really hard to get those in a mail delivery truck if the mail delivery truck can't get down the street. So, ACH is a great way to receive money, and also obviously direct deposit for paychecks. And getting back to paychecks, we've talked to some businesses who actually automate the first payroll run after an earthquake so that they're not scrambling to try and figure out, who had hours logged for the week. They're just going to run the same payroll they ran last week kind of automatically in the aftermath of an earthquake because your employees are going to need that money. They're going to have rebuilding they've got to do. And then in terms of some of the big safety nets, California iBank and also Small Business Administration offer emergency loans, and we've got contact information in the guide for those entities. SBA actually will do homeowner loans too, so even if you just are a homeowner and you need a loan, you can go to SBA for that. And then if you have a way to keep some cash on premise that's in a safe way that's you deem it's safe, you know, even your employees might need a little pocket cash if they're trying to get home in the aftermath of an earthquake. They might not, you know, no one's carrying cash nowadays. I think there's been some discussion already about physical facilities. You know, most of the buildings are built to a code that's life safety, and I think this was mentioned earlier. You really want a building that's going to withstand and still be there, so your business has got a place to operate from. So, you know, our thought is take this step this year. Just get an inspection or get a report from your landlord about the property's seismic resilience and take a small step forward on that. Maybe it's just budgeting $1,000 this year to bring in a consultant or to take care of one thing, you know, bolting down some heavy things that might fall. That one little step, you know, if you do that every year, it starts to add up and you become much more safe for your employees and more likely to have a structure around you for recovery. And this point about power backup, you know, I think in the past it would have been, you know, maybe we can get some power generators in. More and more we're seeing businesses and commercial buildings look at solar plus storage, you know, battery storage. And right now in Northern Cal, you know, there's a big de-energization of the grid, and you know, businesses and residential customers are all pretty upset about that. So, you know, that's the new reality. And you know, if you've got a solar array and a battery system connected to that, you know, that's a fantastic workaround, and it's going to be a big help after an earthquake as well. Okay, and then test your plans. That's pretty obvious. You don't make a tape backup and then never see if you can get the data back off the tape. So do the same thing with your resilience plans. And then try and share these ideas. You know, if you know anyone, if you run into another business, just let them know the guide's out there. You know, this is online. Also, you can get this at our website at ledc.org/EQ for earthquake. And there's a Spanish version up there too. And that's about the end of my comments. I'm happy to take a question or two, and I just want to thank BizFed again for the time to be up here.